Hello everyone, welcome back. It's Coach Fury here today. I'm back on the channel here with CBGM and our Michigan Let's Play series, where we are following myself in an online human multiplayer league for Draft Day Sports College Basketball 21. And there's not a great deal to update you on in terms of the episode today. Going to be quite a short one. We're just going to talk a little bit about decisions, post-recruiting, going into the season, and think about some of the key things we're going to have to consider before we get to the first set of games. In the next episode, probably we'll talk a little bit about that and the results for those. But let's dive straight into this one today and talk a little bit about some of those decisions we need to make before we obviously go into these games and the schedule itself. So the first thing we've got to do really today is to have a think about who we want to redshirt on this team. So redshirting a player essentially means that player is not allowed to play in any rotation for you for that season, but you get that year of eligibility back. So it's good in the sense that if you've got a player who's got high potential, but it's not quite there in terms of development yet, it's a good way of keeping that player for an extra year, get that year of development and training and developing the systems and strategies that you might play on your team, to then hopefully come back next year, be a much better rounded player, probably get far more minutes than you would have done this year, and hopefully you get that year of eligibility back. You obviously have to try and match that up against the prospect that if it is a high star recruit and talent, as everyone knows in real life, obviously guys come into the NCAA and they only play for 1 year and then they go on to the professional scene, be it with the NBA, be it Europe, etc. So there will be players that will obviously come into the CBGM who will be freshmen, who will have high potential and might not necessarily be fully developed. They might be incredibly sort of raw, but they may decide to declare for the draft because they have that potential. And as everyone knows, if NBA teams are drafting, they draft not just on their current ability, but on the potential they see in that player as well, and whether he'll become an all-star, Hall of Fame player, a good starter, a good rotation piece, etc. So what does that mean for Michigan and our Let's Play here? So I guess there's a couple of guys we've got to try and think about and consider here in terms of who we want to bring who we want to give a red shirt to, really. The first one that I know we've talked a little bit about has been Sean Singletary, a high potential player, 4.5 star player. Current rating is only 1.5 star, and you can see here by his ratings that he's not really a guy who's going to really be starting for us. We have the likes of Michael Belez, who is available and who is starting for us. So obviously we're going to play him. Singletary is definitely not going to be starting for us, and as you can see probably in the depth chart here, he is only playing, I believe, let's double check, he's only playing 4 minutes for us. So realistically, he's a great option to redshirt. He's a freshman. He's not going to play much time for us. He's got great potential. There is obviously the gamble that he might declare for the draft, and a good way of checking that is if you go to the player profile and you check playing time. Obviously, it doesn't really tell you whether he's likely to declare for the draft or not. It depends on other factors at play, but he doesn't care about playing time, which is great, because what that also means is that whilst he might declare for the draft, being a 4.5 star prospect, who knows, he could think he could do well out of that. But if he doesn't, and we keep him, redshirt him, we're obviously not going to give him any playing time, but because he doesn't care about playing time, the chances of him thinking about a transfer is a lot less, because that's the other thing you've got to factor in with some of these redshirt guys, is that if you do redshirt a guy of high potential who might not necessarily be great in terms of the current overall ability, if they want playing time, they're not going to be very happy with you. They are going to go and find somewhere else where they will get playing time and they won't be redshirted next season. So we have to kind of balance that off. And we have a maximum of 2 players that we can redshirt. So I think the first obvious one is Sean Singletary. There's no doubt about that. We are going to basically redshirt him this year. I really want him to develop. If he can develop into maybe an additional bit of defensive ability, a different different skill set that he'll be able to add to himself. He's already got a good outside shot. I love the fact he draws fouls. And I'm okay with everything else. I mean, I can live with the rebounding being 40s. That works for me. But mainly, if you can get that defensive ability up, maybe to like 50s or so in sort of just in training, that would be awesome. Because for me, he might not be a scorer, but he's a guy who can basically play a stretch for us, draw fouls and contact, and probably be a starter for us next year, which is good because we don't necessarily have someone coming in to play his actual position at this moment in time. As you know, we've got Graves and Brown coming in, who is a centre and a shooting guard. So no brainer. We're going to obviously redshirt Sean Singletary, so we will let the league know about that. So when we come back next time, we look at depth charts and things, he is going to be redshirted. So we do have a option for redshirting a second player, and we're obviously going to pick that up, I think. We have a couple of decisions to make here. We can either give it maybe to someone like Nick Campbell, who is a 2-star current player, 3.5-star potential. He's not too concerned about playing time again, and realistically he's not going to play many minutes for us because we have Scotty Osler, who's going to take up the bulk of the small forward minutes. We also have someone like Jojo Geeson, who is a 5-star potential player. You can see here he's got some good overall ability. That court IQ is a little bit low and the ball handling is a little bit low for my liking. But again, he's not too concerned about playing time. So another high potential player. So realistically, we've got those two options in my mind. I'm not going to redshirt anyone else because I think everyone else is kind of going to go into our rotation. I mean, we could look at possibly someone like an Al Johnson, but because we're already redshirting Sean Singletary, it doesn't make sense to redshirt 2 players at the same position. Particularly, in the fact that we would probably end up needing someone like an Al Johnson if deep down the bench if we get an injury, for example, in a last chance kind of option. There's no point in us obviously looking at someone like Jason Seymour. Yes, he is a freshman, but I mean, to be perfectly honest with you, his ratings are so bad. There's no point in redshirting someone like that. So it's kind of between Nick Campbell and Jojo Geeson. I mean, we obviously have Brown coming in next year, the shooting guard. But my view is that Colin Brown hopefully is going to play both point guard, shooting guard, and maybe some small forward minutes if we go ultra small ball. So for me, I think Jojo Geeson is the next one we are going to redshirt. Because I know we have Brown coming in, as I said, but we've got Iacona and we've got Beak already, who are going to take up most of the minutes for us, to be perfectly honest with you. That is going to be our backcourt with probably with someone like a Trenton, Shelton coming off the bench or something to support that. So it makes sense for us to redshirt a frontcourt player, a backcourt player, and 2 guys who've got higher potential that we can hopefully develop through the season, and hopefully they'll come back next year and be much better players for us. To add to the likes of Brown and Graves, who we'll have coming in, and we'll obviously have some of the other guys who are still around. So that kind of brings us to the conclusion of where we are in terms of redshirting players. I think that's the 2 decisions that we're going to make. Obviously, we're then going to have to really think about the depth chart itself, because obviously we'll have to find someone to take Singletary's minutes and also someone to take Campbell's garbage minutes, but that shouldn't be too much of a challenge. I think we can go a little bit tighter on the lineup, so and kind of afford to do that anyway. So other things we've got to think about, which we haven't got to necessarily to worry about too much this time, is obviously staff as well. But we'll probably come back to that when we get to the actual staff hiring next season. So I think that brings us to a conclusion in terms of the roster itself, in terms of the decisions at this moment in time. Let's have a quick look at the schedule, because the schedule has come up now. Our assistant has gone away and taken our needs into account and come up with this schedule. So who have we got? Well, I mean, we've got Nevada in the NIT season tip-off, which is interesting. So they're an unranked team. I think Nevada are a pretty good all-round team when I remember looking at them. Yeah, they're not too bad. I mean, we should still get a win against them. We have more talent on paper than they do, but that's a good one for us to start off with. Let's go back to our schedule and have a look. We're then playing Richmond, Green Bay, Washington, Austin. Okay, so we're playing a bunch of sort of unranked low teams, low prestige teams basically. That's good because that'll hopefully enable us to hopefully get a couple of wins, develop our strategy and our game plan before we come up against quite a tough test against Duke, and then obviously we can go into our regular season games. Yeah, I'm okay with that. I'm actually okay with that schedule. I think it's nicer to have that sort of slightly soft schedule in the middle, and then before we play a big team, because we'll hopefully get an understanding of how we want our team to play in terms of strategy and depth chart and everything that goes along with that. Refine that a little bit, and then really test it against a good team in Duke, and then we'll really see where we stand up against one of the elite teams in the CBGM this year. So that brings us to our conclusion really for this episode. As I said, next time we'll come back, we'll probably talk a little bit about maybe the first game will have happened, and we'll talk a little bit about strategy and what we've done there and what we're thinking about going forward. But interested to hear your thoughts in terms of the red shirts. Do you think Singletary and Geeson were the right decisions there? Would you have redshirted some other guys that are on in this roster? Interested to hear your thoughts. As I said, I'm still learning a little bit about this college game, playing the pro game mainly, but learning an awful lot as we go along. Hopefully the likes of Geeson and Singletary will develop through the season, and we'll come back next year and we'll have two really, really good starting players off the bat ready to go for us in our second season, which will be awesome. But if you're enjoying the follow as it goes along each episode, hit that like and subscribe button, and you'll obviously get notifications as and when I put these episodes up about Michigan and about the CBGM, of course, as well, as we have other episodes that are a little bit wider ranging about the Big Ten and about recruiting, etc. So we'll keep going along. Hopefully next time we'll come along and we'll get that win, the opening win against the Las Vegas Nevada Running Rebels, and kick our season off with a great start.